Welcome and thank you for joining us for the launch of VIEWpoint Brazil. I'm Sally Stevens and I lead on communication and dissemination for VIEWpoint for the Institute for Environmental Analytics. A couple of housekeeping notices for attendees. This webinar is being recorded. Your microphones and cameras are off, but please do post your questions in the Q&A during the presentations, and we will have time to invite our panelists to answer them later. Thanks to our interpreters today, you can listen in either Portuguese or English. Just click on the globe button at the bottom of your PC screen and choose your preferred language. On a mobile phone or tablet, you will find the channels under the menu or under the three dots. Bilingual speakers can stay in the off mode. You will hear the presenters in their own languages. People who want to listen in English, pick the English channel. You'll hear the original English presenters and the English interpreter for those speaking in Portuguese. People who want to listen in Portuguese should pick the Portuguese channel. You will hear the original Portuguese presenters and the Portuguese interpreter for those speaking in English. We are delighted to share with you the user-friendly resources we have developed from the climate science and climate services research of the Climate Science for Service Partnership, which you will hear referred to as CSSP Brazil. You will be hearing from some of the scientists later, but our speakers for this opening session will introduce themselves shortly. And now I would like to open our launch event by handing over to Georgina Eyre, Prosperity Councillor for Brazil.
Good morning and thank you everybody, and thank you for that introduction. My name is Georgina Eyre and I am the Prosperity Councillor based here in Brasilia, and it's a real privilege to join this webinar this morning. So first of all, welcome and thank you to many people, many organisations, to MCTI, to the Met Office, to the Brazilian Research Centres, IMPE, INPA, and I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but CEMADEN, C-E-M-A-D-E-N. I'm afraid I'm never very good with acronyms, and to everybody else attending on line for this launch of VIEWpoint. So thank you, and thank you for the invitation. In November 2021, as you all know, the UK hosted COP26 in Glasgow, and it was a huge success. Glasgow made ambitious pledges on accelerating our economy to its transition towards 100% zero emissions, and to work with the international community to phase out coal and to halt and reverse deforestation. The UK firmly believes that climate change is one of the most important global issues that faces us. The international cooperation is vital, and that Brazil is a key player. We stand ready to work with Brazil as we continue to cooperate in this critical agenda, as we do with all countries. And we're keen to work with Brazil to raise ambitions on the NDC towards net zero future, to deliver critically to implement the outcomes and the commitments that were made at COP26, to tackle deforestation and to support standing forests. Science and transparency have a vital role to play in building our understanding of climate dynamics, supporting building scenarios and data monitoring that enable policy decisions and actions to achieve our ambitions. The Climate Science for Services Partnership is one of the largest bilateral projects in Brazil. It's an absolutely excellent example of how we can work together to promote partnerships between scientists and innovators to tackle global challenges of the day in order to improve the lives of all of our citizens. The VIEWpoint platform is one of the incredible outcomes harnesses from the CSSP Brazil. Communicating scientific findings have never been so challenging and never been so important. This platform will have a vital role in connecting some of the cutting edge information produced by Brazilian and British scientists to decision makers. One of the most difficult things, certainly in my career, that I've found, but one of the most critical things to an order evidence-based decision-making. The VIEWpoint platform is an innovative approach to encourage wider use of the CSSP resources and science services in Brazil, the UK and internationally, promoting climate adaptation and mitigation strategies that could help protect vulnerable people and to enhance climate resilience services to mitigate the social and economic impacts of extreme weather events. So it's just for me to say thank you, both for what this partnership has achieved in terms of excellent science and the long-lasting research links between the UK and Brazil, and for this amazing dissemination toolbox being delivered by the VIEWpoint platform. I'm excited to see the results and I'm excited to follow the progress. So thank you and good luck.
Thank you very much, Georgina, and we really appreciate your support. And now I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Chris Jones of the UK's National Meteorological Service, the Met Office, to talk about the fantastic partnership that has been built between CSSP's Brazilian and UK scientists.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you everyone at IEA for arranging this and for asking me to speak. So my name is Chris Jones. I'm a climate scientist at the Met Office in the UK, and I'm the science lead behind the project. And as you've heard, CSSP Brazil is a partnership between UK and Brazil research institutes to advance the science that underpins climate services. So whether that's services to government or to the public, it's led in the UK by the Met Office and by IMPI, IMPA and CIMADEN in Brazil. And we kind of co-designed this back in 2015. We had a scoping meeting, so kind of 6 years ago since we started the project. And since then, it's kind of really grown into a hugely successful collaboration. So all of the partners have much wider research institutes, much wider research interests, but we kind of focused on the intersection between them. And that initial scoping identified 3 core areas that we wanted to develop jointly. So one on modelling capability, and then on science that underpins both mitigation and adaptation advice. So it's increasingly clear from the new IPCC reports that have been coming out over the last 12 months that the world needs to focus on both mitigation and adaptation. So we need to adapt to climate change that is already happening. We can already see the impacts affecting everywhere in the world. And we need to mitigate, we need to reduce our emissions to stop these getting progressively worse and worse. So it's not a choice between mitigation and adaptation. We need to bring these all together and consider both. And as you'll hear from the talks to come, we've really advanced the knowledge across all of these topics. So around Brazil's ecosystems and their resilience to climate change, their relevance to carbon budgets. We've done a lot of work on climate modelling with a particular focus on the mechanisms that control extreme rainfall, and then the impacts of climate change, in particular focus on hydrological events such as floods, droughts, fires and agriculture. To date, the project has produced, I think, just over 100 academic research papers, and there's a really, really good spread of UK lead authors, Brazil lead authors, but most importantly, it's the joint authorship of these studies. We've really built some lasting collaborations. So on a personal kind of note, I'd just like to say it's been a really great pleasure and a privilege to have kind of been able to work on this project. And we've made, not just new colleagues, we've made some lasting friendships actually, and that's kind of what's been really great, and that hopefully will help this work between us to endure. And we look forward to many more years of fruitful work together to help tackle the climate crisis. So thanks, Sally.
Thank you very much, Chris, for that introduction to the true partnership of this project and how it has advanced knowledge for mitigation and adaptation. We are honoured to have with us now Mr. Marcio Rojas, who is the General Coordinator of Climate Sciences and Sustainability in the Brazilian Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovations. Mr. Rojas.
Good morning or good afternoon. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I must say at this point that Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovations is delighted to participate in the launch of the Climate Science and for Service Partnerships platform. I would like to thank you for this precious opportunity. A few words from our work. In recent years, we have been following the development of some global trends in the fields of science, technology and innovation, the digitalization of science and innovation, the access to research data, the deepening international cooperation in research, and the design of national mission-oriented programs are some examples. Furthermore, global grand challenges in climate and environment and those related to other sustainable development goals have become more prominent on the policy agenda in all domains, including, naturally, in the science, technology, and innovation agenda. Science plays an important role in strengthening international cooperation and vice versa. Contemporary global challenges do not recognize geopolitical boundaries and do not encourage isolated ways of resolution. This is evidently the case of climate change and related topics as biodiversity, sustainable energy, food security, water resources, and oceans, just to name a few. The production of science at the frontier of knowledge and cutting-edge technology to overcome global challenges depends on expensive experiments and large research infrastructures, which are impossible in some cases to be afforded by a single country. We believe the solutions necessarily involves international cooperation for the sharing of installations and co-financing. Brazil already has strong international science, technology, and innovations partnerships. I will not be exhaustive in examples, but I can mention a concrete joint project with China, the Cyber Satellite Family, which was the first major South-South technology cooperation in the world, dated 1988. The Brazilian policy of science, technology, and innovation, with a strong support for the training of human capital and the modernization of the infrastructure of laboratories in universities and research centers, is responsible for the expressive increase of indicators related to masters and qualified doctors, researchers, and published scientific articles. For companies, the new legal science, technology, and innovations framework will contribute to the absorption of researchers and the increase of their technological capacity. Brazil should bring science, technology, and innovation closer to society, bringing together economic development and social inclusion. In the country, both the increase of student interest in sciences and increases in productivity are sought. We emphasize the importance of promoting entrepreneurship, of conducting science and technology discoveries to the market, from alliances between universities and companies. In the past few years, the planning of the science, technology, innovation policy in Brazil has taken into account the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, orienting these priorities and actions to reach the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The action plans derived from the National Strategy of Science, Technology, Innovation are fully aligned with the SDGs, because we're completely aware that science, technology, innovation plays a decisive role in the achievement of the objectives of the 2030 Agenda. In this scenario, we consider the cooperation of the United Kingdom plays a fundamental role in facing current global challenges, and the contribution from the Climate Science and for Service Partnerships platform has significant importance. We hope that our participation in this initiative will not only benefit the academic and government institutions involved, but also society in general. And before I finish, please allow me to thank United Kingdom for another cooperation, another joint initiative, which is concretely starting right now, the Amazon Face program, surely one of the most important scientific projects of today. It will bring us relevant knowledge to better deal with the challenges posed by global climate change. So I thank Cindy Parker, through whom I extend my thanks to everyone on the team involved with this initiative. Thank you again for this opportunity, and I wish you all an excellent event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rojas. And we're very grateful to you for taking the time to come today and for giving us added impetus to put these resources into the hands of climate decision makers in Brazil. As you have heard, the key Brazilian institutions in the CSSP partnership are the Brazilian National Space Agency, INPE, the National Institute of Amazonian Research, INPA, and Brazil's National Centre for Monitoring and Early Warning of Natural Disasters, CEMADEN. And I invite Dr. Osvaldo Moraes, Director of CEMADEN, to present on their behalf.
Well, good morning and a good afternoon for all of you. And let me follow the suggestion from Maria to speak in Portuguese. Well, bem, é uma alegria muito grande estar no lançamento de mais um resultado do projeto de cooperação que iniciou há alguns anos atrás e do qual o Cris já fez um sumário dos principais motivos desta cooperação. Envolver 3 unidades de pesquisas do Brasil e uma unidade de pesquisa de um país que está do outro lado do oceano e fazer com que essa cooperação não seja apenas pontual e em alguns momentos específicos, mas que seja uma cooperação que tenha uma sequência no tempo desde o seu início, é realmente um desafio muito grande. Nós aprendemos, as instituições brasileiras aprenderam nesse período como fazer interações entre nós mesmos para podermos fortalecer as interações com outros países. Eu acho que isso talvez seja um dos resultados mais significativos desta atividade. Não é muito simples fazer colaborações entre 2 unidades de pesquisas que sejam permanentes. Imaginem cooperações entre 3 unidades de pesquisas que tenham uma sequência e, mais importante ainda, que tenham a possibilidade de essa cooperação se estender por um longo prazo de tempo, mesmo no futuro. E eu acho que essa é uma porta que se abriu e que nós devemos fazer todos os esforços para manter essa porta aberta, possibilitando que essa cooperação se estenda para os próximos anos. Eu gostaria de agradecer os nossos colegas pesquisadores do INPA, do INPE, do CEMADEN e do UK Met Office por terem compreendido ao longo de todos os períodos quão difícil é, mas assim mesmo manterem a energia e para alcançar resultados significativos. Muito obrigado e eu espero sinceramente que nós possamos estender essa cooperação para os próximos anos.
Thank you so much, Osvaldo. And thank you to all our opening speakers. You have given us some fantastic insights into the difference we can make using the world-leading science of the CSSP Brazil partnership, and also what has also been achieved already, and its future potential as we continue to collaborate. So let's move on to hear more about the CSSP Brazil resources that we are launching on the new VIEWpoint Brazil website today. And a reminder that as you listen to our speakers, you are welcome to put your questions into the Q&A. So I'm delighted to invite my colleague, Dr. John Blower, Chief Technology Officer of the Institute for Environmental Analytics, to introduce the new VIEWpoint resources.
Thank you very much, Sally. I hope you can hear me okay. So yes, my name is John Blower. It's my very great pleasure to introduce to you the new VIEWpoint Brazil website. And this collects together a very wide range of resources that communicate outputs from the CSSP program in plain language to a wide audience of decision makers and beyond. And this is really collecting together the work of very, very many different people and research groups in Brazil and the UK. So I'd like to start off really by thanking all the contributors very much indeed for all their engagements, all the time and the effort they have spent with us to help us to create this wonderful content and make it available to the world through our website. So just before I go to the website itself, I just wanted to make a very brief introduction of ourselves as an organization, because I know many of you won't be familiar with exactly who we are. We are the Institute for Environmental Analytics, or the IEA. We are based at the University of Reading in the UK. The University of Reading is one of the UK's centres for environmental science research. And our mission in the IEA is really to help decision makers to get the most out of environmental data by making it much more useful for them, presenting it in forms they can understand, translating the research into outputs that they can use. We're specialists in analytics and data analysis, software development, data visualization, communication, and so we're really delighted to be a part of this really important project. So this slide just briefly summarizes the website content and gives you the web address at the bottom here, www.viewpoint-brazil.org. But what I really want to do is to show you the website live itself. So I'm going to switch to it now. So here's the website front page. One of the first things you will notice is that all of the content on the website is translated into 2 languages, into English and Portuguese. And if we go to the About page here, you will see more information about the background from the VIEWpoint project and the CSSP program in general, and indeed the other CSSP programs and partnerships around the world. So we have a wide range of downloadable resources, again, available in both English and Portuguese, and they are organized by theme: carbon, climate modeling, climate attribution, agriculture, wildfires, and a future look. The speakers after me will be talking about these themes in more detail, so I'm not going to go into details here, but I will show you just some examples of the content we have. So this is in the carbon theme now. Here we have an example of one of our explainer documents, which is downloadable again, summarizing this particular piece of research, also available, of course, in Portuguese as well, as an explanatory note or explainer, as we call it. These resources are all collected together alongside other content, such as interviews with scientists, in our interactive handbook, which is also downloadable. I will show you some examples from the handbook. So this collects together a variety of articles from the website and also other content as well. If I move across here, there is a searchable catalogue of all the scientific papers that have been published from the CSSP Brazil program. And this, of course, is being added to all the time. So as new papers become available, we will add them to this website. And in fact, that is true for the website as a whole, that we will be updating the website with new resources as they become available. So we can show that we can filter the content of the papers on certain themes. So if you wanted to find papers about flooding, you could do that. I just have to juggle my windows here slightly because Zoom is putting extra windows in my way. So that would show us all the papers on flooding from, for example, 2021. There is a glossary of terms that we use throughout the website in both languages again, so that everybody can be clear about the definitions we're using for all the different terms. And the final thing I would like to show you is 2 demonstrator applications that we have built based upon research that has been done within the CSSP program. I will start with this first one, which is about forecasting the peak of the river level at Manaus. So this is a very important problem. We can see immediately from this graph that the height of the river at Manaus varies greatly throughout the year, with a range of almost 10 meters. The timing of the peak of the maximum river level is quite well constrained, usually happening around June. But the variability in how high that peak can be really changes very much from year to year. This is what these brown borders show, is the possible ranges of the peak river level. And so this demonstrator showcases the results from a new statistical model developed at the University of Reading here and at CEH in the UK that predicts what the height of the peak will be given the information that is available earlier in the year. So this is using observations and also seasonal forecasts. So we can look, for example, in this particular case, we are showing we were imagining that we are now in March 2021. We have observations of up to the end of March, and we want to make a forecast of what the river level will be. We could do the same, for example, imagining that we were in January, trying to make the same forecast. So this demonstrator shows the skill of the forecast in predicting the height of the peak, given information that would be available early in the season. And we can see that we can make skillful predictions of the peak several months in advance. The second demonstrator that I would like to show you is all about cloud bands. A cloud band is an extensive area of cloud that can stretch all the way from the Amazon into the South Atlantic. And cloud bands are responsible for a large fraction of the rainfall in central and eastern Brazil. The University of Oxford here in the UK has developed a technique for identifying cloud bands in satellite images. And they've used this algorithm over many, many years of data to collect information about the history of cloud bands and the role they have played in controlling the rainfall over Brazil. This first page of the demonstrator simply shows the average position of the cloud band, showing the number of days in each location where a cloud band will occur, showing this concentration over Brazil. But we can also look at different ways of viewing the data, for example, to look at the difference between years with a strong El Nino phenomenon and years with a La Nina phenomenon. So this is showing that in a La Nina year, we tend to get more cloud band events in the north and fewer in the south. And the reverse is true in El Nino years, slightly more cloud band events in the south and slightly fewer in the north. And this demonstrator really acts as an explorer or an atlas or a catalogue of all these cloud bands events. So if you're interested in what's happened in particular years, you can really drill down into the data. Each of these little lines here is a particular cloud band event. And if I were to click on a certain year, we could see how the cloud band events correlate with peaks in rainfall, which is this the white trace here. These colored markers show the coincidence of cloud bands with particular natural phenomena, natural disasters such as floods and landslides. And if you want to view how an individual cloud band forms and evolves, you can do that too, as well as looking at the patterns of rainfall that are occurring, that were observed as well. So this really is a great resource for understanding the role of cloud bands in controlling rainfall in Brazil and how they've changed over time. I think that's all I've got time for in terms of demonstrating this website. I hope you found that interesting. I encourage you all to go and visit the website and look at all these resources. As I say, we're still updating them all the time. There'll be new content coming on soon. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank you all very much for your attention.
And thank you, John. And just a reminder that all those resources are available to freely access and share on the website. That's a great example of what can be achieved through pooling our skills and our knowledge. And I'd like to give particular thanks to our colleagues, Barbara Percy, who designed and produced the website, and to our graphic designer, Tom Whitlock. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Celso von Rando, Head of Impacts, Adaptation and Vulnerability Division of INPE, the Brazilian National Space Agency.
Thank you. I will present in Portuguese. Bom dia, boa tarde. Obrigado pela oportunidade de representar aqui um grupo de diferentes cientistas que vem trabalhando nesse projeto no tema de pesquisa em carbono. Então, esse slide mostra aí alguns dos diferentes métodos, diferentes abordagens que a gente vem investigando, como os ecossistemas interagem com o clima e como o uso dos recursos dos ecossistemas podem impactar as trocas de carbono entre os ecossistemas e a atmosfera. Então, particularmente no Brasil, o papel das florestas tropicais é muito importante porque tem um impacto grande no balanço de carbono. Então, a gente tem estudos aí do desmatamento e da degradação florestal, e é importante distinguir aqui, né? O desmatamento é a conversão de uma área de floresta para um uso diferente, por exemplo, uma classe de agricultura, uma pastagem, e a degradação é quando a floresta perde parte da capacidade de fornecer recursos, mas ainda é classificada como uma paisagem de floresta, não há mudança de classe para um outro tipo. Então, geralmente é um incêndio, uma coleta seletiva de madeira que afeta a floresta e a gente percebe aí uma floresta degradada. Outras pesquisas avaliam as emissões de metano em áreas alagáveis, o potencial de crescimento de florestas secundárias e finalmente, combinando esses processos, são analisados de maneira integrada para uma avaliação acurada do balanço de carbono. Next slide, please. Então, esse é um pequeno esquema dos principais processos de troca, diferentes componentes dos fluxos de carbono mostrados como era historicamente no estado natural da vegetação e a situação atual, e que em parte da região amazônica, na verdade, grande parte dos ecossistemas de outros biomas brasileiros já vem sendo desmatado, também áreas de degradação, onde ocorrem incêndios, e impactam a saúde da floresta. Então, essas áreas têm se tornado uma fonte de carbono para a atmosfera. E essas mudanças na paisagem, obviamente, afetam o clima regional de maneira significativa e aumentam emissões de gases de efeito estufa e impactam o clima global. Próximo slide, next one, please. Essa é uma visão geral das emissões e remoções das últimas 3 décadas. Um artigo que nós publicamos esse ano, aí saiu agora em fevereiro, e as barras são o balanço de emissões e remoções de carbono estimadas na comunidade científica, são os valores anuais, e aí vocês veem círculos vermelhos na parte superior, que são os valores oficiais de emissões reportadas pela Comunicação Nacional do Brasil, a Convenção das Nações Unidas, e aí os círculos verdes, na parte negativa do gráfico, são as estimativas de remoção, também reportadas na Comunicação Nacional, são computando a absorção de carbono em áreas protegidas, terras indígenas. Então, bom, apesar de haver algumas diferenças metodológicas, a Comunicação Nacional e a comunidade científica concordam, né, que houve uma redução substancial nas emissões a partir dos anos 2000, a partir de 2004, quando as políticas de combate ao desmatamento entraram em ação, né? E a partir de 2012 vem ocorrendo um aumento nas emissões. Próximo slide, por favor. Next one. E aí há também, né, o recrescimento de vegetação de floresta em áreas que sejam restauradas ou abandonadas, e essa vegetação que cresce novamente é chamada de vegetação secundária, floresta secundária, Então, nesse crescimento de floresta secundária, elas absorvem novamente uma grande quantidade de carbono. E aí esse artigo do ano passado, da Viola Heinrich, é uma contribuição importante, estimando o quanto de área está regenerando em florestas secundárias, e principalmente investigando, mostrando que esse crescimento não é uniforme, né? Há diferenças espaciais, há diferenças no clima, onde há bastante chuva, há também uma taxa de recrescimento maior. E onde há um clima mais seco ou distúrbios de ação humana, aí a taxa de recrescimento pode ser até 55% menor. Então, quantificar essas diferenças aí é essencial para proteger e expandir as florestas secundárias e contribuir para mitigar as emissões. Próximo slide, por favor. Next one. Então, bom, as principais ações de controle de mitigação no Brasil nos anos 2000, 2010, sempre foram focadas em reduzir as taxas de desmatamento, o que é extremamente importante. Mas é importante também entender os processos de degradação florestal, incêndios, e esses resultados aí desse jovem pesquisador do INPE, o Celso Silva Júnior, ele destacou, né, esse importante efeito de a borda entre a floresta e a área desmatada. As regiões próximas à borda são também impactadas por fogo ou por uma intensificação na degradação pelo clima local ser afetado pela proximidade do desmatamento. Então, mapeando também as bordas da floresta, combinando com sensoriamento remoto, estima-se que esse efeito indireto pode também emitir até 30% do estimado pelo desmatamento, e o que não está explicitamente reportado esses valores, né? Então, bom, a mensagem principal é que o conhecimento gerado por esses estudos é extremamente importante para subsidiar as políticas, quantificar adequadamente os impactos do clima e das ações humanas nos ecossistemas. Obrigado. Thank you.
Thank you, Celso. And just a reminder to all our audience that you are welcome to put questions in the Q&A box. So also from INPE, we have next climate scientist, Dr. Lincoln Alves.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I will speak in Portuguese, as Celso did. Bom dia a todos. No âmbito do projeto CSP Brasil, os pesquisadores do Brasil e Reino Unido combinaram os seus conhecimentos especializados sobre modelagem climática e o clima do Brasil para procurar entender melhor quais serão as condições climáticas no futuro. É importante destacar também que muito desses estudos desenvolvidos nesse aspecto de modelagem devem ser vistos como pioneiros. Então, nessa breve apresentação, serão destacados alguns dos principais resultados obtidos com esse exercício. Então, a pergunta, né, quais são as projeções climáticas, eu substituiria por exemplo, o que as mudanças climáticas significam para a América do Sul ou para o Brasil. Então, do ponto de vista observacional, o Brasil já mostra sinais da mudança do clima. Já vimos mais extremos de calor e mudanças nos padrões de precipitação. E eventos climáticos extremos recentes, como, por exemplo, as secas na Amazônia, enchentes em Minas Gerais e no sudeste do Brasil, são alguns exemplos e revelam a vulnerabilidade das diversas regiões do Brasil à mudança do clima. Do ponto de vista de futuro, né, o Brasil... Next, please. Do ponto de vista de futuro, o Brasil conta agora, no âmbito desse projeto, né, com uma plataforma online que é possível visualizar os cenários da mudança do clima para todo o território nacional. O portal chama-se Projeções Climáticas no Brasil. É uma ferramenta inédita no país, que foi construído em colaboração com os colegas do Reino Unido para disponibilizar de maneira acessível projeções climáticas derivadas tanto de modelos globais quanto de regionais. E, por meio dessa plataforma, é possível visualizar, por exemplo, mudanças no ciclo hidrológico, entre outros aspectos relacionados à mudança do clima, e tem por finalidade também subsidiar ações de adaptação ou aprofundamento em estudos de impacto. Next, please. Um outro aspecto importante no contexto da modelagem está relacionado com a mudança no clima e suas interações superfície-atmosfera, a exemplo do desmatamento da floresta amazônica ou de outros biomas como o cerrado, e aspectos como o Celso mostrou na apresentação anterior. Então, nesse contexto, o modelo chamado JULIS, né, foi bastante utilizado para estudar o impacto da mudança da vegetação, fluxo de energia em superfície e seus associados biogeoquímicos e processos hidrológicos. Então, foi bastante importante a utilização desse modelo desenvolvido no Reino Unido, dando suporte aos pesquisadores do Brasil explorar essas diferentes possibilidades de impacto da mudança do clima. Próximo, next, please. Por fim, um terceiro aspecto, e eu diria inovador e pioneiro no Brasil e na América do Sul, são as simulações e projeções de altíssima resolução espacial, da ordem de 4 km, denominado Convection Permit Modeling, onde elas demonstram fornecer uma representação muito melhor da convecção, da chuva, né, e são capazes de simular eventos extremos localizados, não capturados por modelos de resoluções mais grosseiras, resoluções espaciais da ordem de 25, 50 até 100 km. Então, nessa ilustração aí, a gente vê do lado esquerdo um modelo regional de 25 km, representando a precipitação horária sobre a região de Manaus, e do lado direito o exercício, né, do Convection Permit Model, onde se visualiza as convecções, a chuva, extremas em horários. Então, por fim, é importante destacar que todo esse trabalho no âmbito do arcabouço de modelagem resume o estado da arte do conhecimento sobre o tema, buscando fornecer aos tomadores de decisão e aos usuários, de uma maneira geral, ferramentas e estudo para análise de risco que precisam ser, de fato, compreendidos e incorporados ao planejamento de políticas públicas. That's it. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, Lincoln, for that guide through climate modelling. And you can hear Lincoln and Rob Chadwick from the Met Office talking in more detail about that exciting CSSP Brazil breakthrough in high-resolution convective permitting modelling in a video explainer on the new website, as well as read a useful guide to the climate models. Now, Dr. Sarah Sparrow from the University of Oxford and Dr. Ricardo Dallagnol, who worked on the CSSP Brazil for INPE, will tell us about their investigations into what effects climate change is having on extreme weather events in Brazil. I'm delighted that Sarah is with us today. Unfortunately, Ricardo, who is now a postdoctoral researcher at the University of California, Los Angeles and NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, cannot be here today, but he has kindly recorded a video for us.
Thank you for inviting me to talk today and to tell you about the area of attribution and the impacts that global warming has already caused on extreme weather events that we experience in Brazil. Next slide, please. So I'd like to sort of start off by saying a bit about what is attribution and what is the science of attribution. This is really where we look at the effect that climate change is having on the likelihood that we're going to experience extreme weather. And from these kinds of studies, we can get several different answers. So we could find that climate change is making a particular extreme event, such as a flood or heavy rainfall event, more likely, less likely, have no change at all on the likelihood of that event occurring, or perhaps we need to do a bit more work on our experimental methods or models in order to tell what effects climate change is going to have. Next slide, please. So I wanted to tell you a bit today about some work that we did in a workshop that we ran for early career researchers in Brazil, and involved sort of collaborators in the UK. And we were looking at a particular heavy rainfall event that occurred in Minas Gerais in January 2020. And as well as trying to assess what effect climate change had on whether or not it was making this particular event more likely to occur, we also spent some time looking at the impacts and cataloguing the impacts that were associated with this event. Next slide, please. And having a look and really quantifying what the impacts are is very important, because it can help us to identify vulnerable communities. So in this particular study, we found areas that were experiencing large impacts that previously hadn't been identified as a vulnerable community. And it's really by performing such analysis that we can help to focus and target where we need to sort of center resilience sort of efforts to try and strengthen those particular communities. So to tell you a bit more about our particular study, I'll pass over to the video from Ricardo.
Hi there, my name is Ricardo Dallagnol, and I'm a scientist from the Brazilian National Institute for Space Research. I participated on a workshop organized by the CSSP together with University of Oxford and CEMADEM Brazil, and we studied the extreme rainfall event that happened over the southeast Brazil on the state of Minas Gerais. We found out with this study that more than 90,000 people were affected by the landslides and floods, and more than $240 million were lost with the impacts. This event was attributed to human-induced climate change with more than 70% of probability of happening. After this study, we promoted some outreach with videos on the YouTube and Twitter, which caught the attention of a local media channel, and we hope these initiatives raised the awareness of people with climate change and hopefully reduce the greenhouse gases emissions. Thank you.
Thank you to both Sarah and Ricardo. And you can read about the attribution workshops and the results in the online VIEWpoint handbook. And Ricardo has also worked with us on 2 videos, which you can watch there as well. Next, we have Dr. Marcelo Terry, who is a researcher at CEMADEM, and Dr. Marcelo Galdos of the University of Leeds to tell us about a new resource to support climate adaptation and mitigation in the agricultural sector. And I think, are they going to share their screen?
No, I think you presenting the slides, right? Or Joe is presenting. So, thanks. Boa tarde, bom dia. Obrigado pela oportunidade de apresentar um pouco dos resultados do nosso projeto. Aqui tive a oportunidade de liderar esse projeto da Universidade de Leeds. Teremos o Marcelo Zeri apresentando o CEMADEM, e quero também agradecer aos nossos parceiros da Escola Superior de Agricultura Luiz Queiroz, da Universidade de São Paulo, e o Centro de Ecologia e Hidrologia do Reino Unido, que foram parceiros também nesse projeto. O próximo slide, por favor. E quando nós falamos de impactos na agricultura, nós estamos nos referindo tanto à variabilidade climática, que já ocorre, em especial, em certas regiões do Brasil, muito afetadas, por exemplo, pela seca, como o Nordeste brasileiro. A gente vê o grande impacto, né, na produção agrícola, na segurança alimentar, que em relação às secas. Nos gráficos à esquerda, a gente vê regionalmente, né, esse impacto, mas também pensando no futuro, como é que as mudanças climáticas vão afetar a produção agrícola no Brasil, um setor tão importante, estratégico, não só para o Brasil, mas para o mundo, né? Tanto em segurança alimentar, energética. E próximo, por favor. Próximo slide. Next slide, please. Então, no nosso projeto, a gente teve 2 resultados principais. Um, a gente pensar o que está acontecendo, como é que a gente monitora impactos climáticos que são muito importantes para a agricultura no Brasil, atualmente e historicamente, né, no histórico recente, mas também como é que a gente olha para o futuro, como é que as mudanças climáticas vão afetar a produção das principais culturas agrícolas, usando ferramentas de modelagem, usando ferramentas que nos auxiliam a entender o que pode acontecer com produtividade agrícola, com solo, com emissões. Próximo slide, next, please. Então, a aplicação de modelos computacionais, né, basicamente é a gente simular processos que ocorrem nas plantas, no solo, na atmosfera, no computador. E nesse projeto a gente teve a oportunidade, então, de melhorar um modelo que foi desenvolvido no Reino Unido a partir do trabalho de centros de excelência no Brasil, incluindo o Exalc, né, com dados experimentais e também o CEMADEM. Então, usando dados de campo, de sensores, usando experimentos agrícolas, a gente conseguiu melhorar a performance de um modelo como o de uso, mas específico para as principais culturas agrícolas. A gente vê à direita alguns resultados, por exemplo, em produtividade de grãos, em produtividade de cana-de-açúcar, no presente, né? Mas também olhando para o futuro regionalmente. Qual seria o impacto do aumento de CO2 na atmosfera, de mudanças em temperatura e precipitação na produtividade de importantes culturas agrícolas. Próximo, por favor. Isso já implica em que a gente precisa se adaptar. E como é que a gente se adapta? Nós temos artigos que estão no VIEWpoint disponíveis, por exemplo, discutindo quais seriam práticas de conservação de água no solo, o uso de culturas mais adaptadas a eventos extremos, incluindo a seca, mas também como a gente usa dados climáticos para a tomada de decisão do produtor e também em políticas públicas. E o meu colega Marcelo Zeri vai, então, descrever um pouco o componente da ferramenta, né, de monitoramento que a gente desenvolveu, que é livremente disponível. Marcelo, por favor, Marcelo Zeri, e o próximo slide, por favor. Next, please.
Bom dia, boa tarde. Essa componente do projeto, ela envolveu a criação de um monitor agroclimático. Esse monitor, ele surgiu da ideia de ter uma ferramenta interativa para mostrar os resultados de monitoramento de seca já feitos pelo CEMADEM. Esse monitoramento pode ser resumido num índice integrado de seca que nós utilizamos. Esse índice ele inclui informações de saúde da vegetação, de totais de chuva e também de umidade do solo. Esse índice, essas informações são apresentadas mensalmente, às vezes a cada 2 semanas, para o público em geral, pelo CEMADEM. Nós apresentamos em relatórios, em reuniões online. E nessa plataforma, a gente teve a oportunidade de colocar essas informações de uma forma interativa. Próximo slide, por favor. Essas são duas telas da plataforma. A figura à esquerda é mais ou menos a tela inicial. Nós temos descrição do projeto, da ferramenta em português e inglês. Esse monitor, ele tem ali à direita a tela do navegador de dados. Nesse navegador é possível escolher os diferentes componentes do nosso índice SECA e o próprio índice composto, chamado de, nesse caso, IDI, que é o Índice Integrado de Secas. É possível clicar em cada bolinha e visualizar cada componente do índice nos anos, desde 2 anos atrás, e nós temos atualizado essa plataforma mensalmente com novas informações, e onde os usuários podem então dar um zoom, ele pode procurar o status da seca no município, em cada município do Brasil, e ver um histórico aí nos últimos meses. A plataforma pode ser acessada nesse link que está sendo apresentado. Obrigado.
Thank you both. That was a really interesting introduction to the Agroclimatic Monitor app, and you can read more about it on the website, including an interesting interview with Dr. Galdos in the VIEWpoint handbook. So now wildfires are increasing in frequency, and climate services have been developed through CSSP Brazil to support fire forecasting, fire prevention, and even in fighting fires. And we can hear more about this from Dr. Chantal Burton from the Met Office and Dr. Liana Anderson of Semeden.
Thank you, Sally. My name is Chantal Burton, and I work on modelling fire with partners in IMPI, IMPA, and Semeden. And Liana and I are going to talk today briefly about a few examples of our work through CSSP Brazil. Next slide, please. So fires in some regions are a natural part of the ecosystem. However, wildfires can occur in places where they're unplanned and can cause unwanted impacts. For example, in Brazil, fires are usually ignited from human activities such as deforestation and land management, and they can have large impacts on ecosystems and water cycles, such as burning of rainforest vegetation that's not adapted to fire and loss of globally important carbon stores. Wildfires need an ignition and fuel to start, but they can be amplified by fire weather conditions such as high temperature, wind, low relative humidity, and low rainfall, as you can see in this graphic based on a CSSP paper by Taylor et al. So part of our work through CSSP Brazil is to try and understand the changing patterns of fire in the past, the impacts today, and how that could change with climate change in the future. Next slide, please. Climate model simulations that include fire show that wildfires and burned land could increase in some regions with global warming. If the world continues to rely on fossil fuels, causing average global temperature rise up to 4 degrees C, then rainfall in South America could fall by up to 7%, increasing the number of days a year with fire weather conditions, which could lead to an increase in burned area. This plot, for example, published in a paper through CSSP Brazil, looked at how fire might change in the future under 4 global warming levels of 1.5 up to 4 degrees, under 3 different emission scenarios, from business as usual to high sustainability, shown in the coloured bars. The results highlight that reducing emissions to keep global temperatures to 1.5 or 2 degrees is really important for reducing the worst impacts of climate change. I'll hand over to Liana.
Thank you, Chantal. So, a fim de evitar os desastres relacionados a incêndios florestais, como o que enfrentamos globalmente durante o ano de 2020, e aqui no Brasil, onde observamos os incêndios consumirem a fauna e flora do Pantanal, um local de importância global, nós, como parte do projeto CSSP Brasil, decidimos desenvolver um sistema de previsão de incêndios que visa melhorar as ações de preparo e, assim, reduzir a probabilidade de ocorrência destes eventos. Esse sistema também contribui diretamente para 2 objetivos principais do Marco de Sendai para a redução do risco de desastres. Primeiro, a necessidade de aumentar o número de países com estratégias nacionais de redução do risco de desastres. E dois, a disponibilidade e acesso a sistemas de alerta precoce. Nossa previsão de probabilidade de incêndios está dividida em 5 categorias de alertas, variando de baixa probabilidade a alerta alto. A informação é gerada para todas as áreas protegidas da América do Sul e municípios brasileiros. Geramos a previsão para os próximos 3 meses, o que permite tempo para o planejamento de preparação e, mais importante, estratégias de prevenção e mitigação da ocorrência de incêndios. A informação está disponível online na plataforma Mapfire e também é transmitida para toda a sociedade mensalmente como parte da reunião de impactos do CEMADEM. Next slide, please. Nossas previsões têm sido utilizadas como parte do Plano Operacional de Prevenção e Combate de Incêndios da Rede de Áreas Protegidas Amolar, no Pantanal. Este plano integrou com sucesso diversas organizações, o que contribui diretamente para diminuir a vulnerabilidade institucional que temos para lidar com os incêndios florestais no Brasil. Estamos agora avaliando como nossas previsões da probabilidade de incêndios podem ser utilizadas pela Defesa Civil dos municípios do estado do Mato Grosso do Sul para acessar antecipadamente fundos visando implementar estratégias de prevenção, tais como a instalação de aceiros ao longo da rede viária. Nossa expectativa é que esse sistema seja amplamente utilizado por outras instituições em todo o território nacional. Obrigada. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's really inspiring to hear that these climate services are already operational. Thank you, Chantal and Liana. And some of the infographics that you saw there and in other infographics are available on the website and could be very useful if you need to download them for your own presentations or for training purposes. So now Jose Marengo of CEMADEN is not able to be with us today, but he didn't want to miss the occasion and he has recorded this special message for us.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me for this presentation. My name is Jose Marengo from the National Center for Monitoring and Early Warning of Natural Disasters in Brazil. I'm going to give you some of the important results of our collaboration project we have with several institutions, including the INPE in Brazil and the UK Met Office in the UK, in the context of the future, predicted impacts of global warming in Brazil. Oh my goodness. Yes, the basic points in terms of Brazil. The research is helping policymakers dealing with extremes across Brazil. The way we see extremes in our center and our context is not just is a lot of rainfall or less rainfall, but are the consequences of that. That's the reason why we have, for instance, the drought and heat interaction in the Pantanal, actually, and then the drought mitigations options in Northeast Brazil, future risk of landslides and floods in southeastern Brazil. Southeastern Brazil and southern Brazil are the regions with the highest rates of these disasters and number of people there. Changing climate and the Cerrado region, and also the flood adaptation strategies in Brazil. All of these are environmental problems, triggered basically by heavy rainfall. This is basically the main results of a paper we published in 2021. The idea is trying to see the risk of landslides and flash floods and how that will change for Brazil whenever we have several cases like the various levels of warming. And just to give you an example, the map shows relative changes in potential impacts of landslides and flash floods across Brazil for the 4 degrees scenario. And the higher risk is in southeastern Brazil and southern Brazil, which at the present are the regions that will be affected, that are affected the most. If you see in the landslides maps, the red regions are the ones that shows the impacts to increase, and the hatching is basically the statistical significance. And then on the right side, the map shows for flash floods are basically the same regions. The darker red are the regions with the potential impacts. And these scenarios, they show basically what will be more related to changes in rainfall, because the vulnerability, urban planning, housing, it hasn't changed. We don't change it. But if we change it, probably the impacts will be even worse. See? And then this is extremely important because last month we have one of the biggest disasters in Brazil. This in the city of Petrópolis in the highlands of Rio de Janeiro. In February 15, 2022, the heavy rainfall in Petrópolis, it was the heaviest since 1932. And in that afternoon, in few hours, 6 hours, we have almost 260 millimeters accumulated of rainfall, when the climatology for February is 202 millimeters. It has been the heaviest event. So far, we have consequences of the flash floods and landslides related to the loss of more than 200 people in there. And this is an interesting comment because sometimes we see that the rainfall is the killer. Actually, it's not the rainfall. The rainfall is the trigger agent. It means that we have a lot of rainfall and it affects people living in vulnerable and exposed areas. We will expect more casualties. And that's the idea of this collaboration. We want to see what's going on in the present and what could be happening in the future. Well, these are the main results, I think, in a 5 minutes slot. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you to Jose, and thank you to all our speakers. And on the website, you can find explainers, which are
okay, well, thank you.
Which are accessible insights into particular pieces of research and science from CSSP Brazil. And you can also find briefing notes, which bring together various different pieces of work on particular themes. Now, working very hard behind the scenes today, as ever, my colleague, Dr. Maria Nagur, our major programs manager here at the Institute for Environmental Analytics, has been reading your questions and comments as you've been posting them. And I hand over to her to put them to our speakers. And can all our speakers put your cameras and microphones on, please, for our question and answer session?
Thank you, Sally. I think it's not just been me answering questions. Thank you very much for all the panelists that have already answered lots of questions, and also Shannon here with me, who has prepared quite a lot of the resources that you will enjoy from the website. So we have been answering questions, but I would like anyway, for the benefits of everybody, to pick up a few of them that has kind of like perhaps grabbed my attention. So first one is about agriculture. So Marcelo, there were a few questions there about what are the adaptation measures for agriculture? Does the model work for a regional, for the whole Brazil? Is the model different from the one that was used in the 4th national communication? So there's a group of questions regarding agriculture. Marcelo, could you say a few words? I know you were answering those questions in the chat, but please.
Yeah, no, I'll be glad to. I'll speak Portuguese then. So, sim, a ferramenta da modelagem, ela é basicamente aplicável, né, a inventários de gases do efeito estufa, simulando, por exemplo, o impacto que certos manejos agrícolas têm no estoque de carbono do solo. Pode ser uma forma de mitigação, mas também de adaptação, né? Aumentar a matéria orgânica do solo pode tornar a agricultura mais resiliente a eventos extremos. Então, a modelagem que a gente chama biogeoquímica, né? É justamente processos na planta, no solo, na atmosfera, que podem ser usados. E essa é apenas uma ferramenta justamente para tentar entender o impacto de políticas públicas, de práticas que podem ser mais sustentáveis, mas isso tem que estar embasado em medições, né? Por isso a importância do investimento na ciência no Brasil, na ciência básica também, de a gente entender processos a partir de experimentos, de observações, aplicação de sensoriamento remoto, de de realmente medições no laboratório. Então, é uma conjugação. O modelo só não faz muita coisa. Ele precisa ser realmente calibrado com dados. E daí a importância muito grande dos parceiros no Brasil com essa expertise, né?
Thank you, Marcelo. I hope that covers all the questions about the agriculture. Thank you very much. Next, it was a group of questions about wildfires. Percentage of wildfires in Brazil. What are the percentage caused by humans? Is that data available? So I'm going to just ask Liana and Chantel to kind of like address these questions. Perhaps Liana, starting with you.
Yes, thank you. The information is available through the platform where you can download in a shapefile format all the forecasts, not only the current, but also the past ones. We have issuing these alerts since August last year. And if you require a different setup for receiving the alerts in terms of a format or something more tailored for your region, then we can prepare this. Just get in touch.
Thank you, Liana. Chantal, anything to add on what Liana has said?
Perhaps I could address the first part of the question a little more about how wildfires are ignited. So this depends a little bit on the biome, but we know in places like tropical rainforests that we don't have many natural ignitions, so a lot of this does come from human activity.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the questions. So the next one was, and Sarah has answered already, but perhaps she wants to expand. What's taken into account to analyze if specific event is linked to climate change? Sarah, could you expand a little bit on your answer?
Yes, of course. So the way that we do this is we typically look at both observations and climate model simulations. So we can make some estimation as to how we think these events may change from observations, but generally the uncertainties surrounding them are quite large. So the way we combat this is we run climate models both with and without the effects of climate change in very large ensemble sizes, so very many iterations of it. And we then look to see how frequently, if you like, the change in frequency that we're experiencing these type of extremes.
Thank you, Sarah. Brilliant. There was a question as well, and Chris answered this, but perhaps he could elaborate, or perhaps Celso as well, about if we have done research in other biomes. And so, Chris, could you expand on that, or Celso, or anybody really, because I think almost all biomes in Brazil have been touched by CSSP. But anyway, don't know, Chris, perhaps to start with.
Yeah. I was struggling to find specific examples, but I know there are many. I mean, so in the question and answer, I posted a link to a special issue of the journal we've got. And there's definitely, I mean, Celso's led work with Andy Wiltshire in the UK on the role of climate change and land use change, and that definitely covers all ecosystems. There's work within the Global Carbon Project to look at better quantifying land use change and land use reporting and marrying that up with satellite observations. So Thais Rosen has got a paper on that. A lot of the work that we've just heard about from the fire, so Chantal has a paper on future fire changes, for example, and how the fire risk right across Brazil changes at different levels of global warming in the future. I think Nick Gedney has done work on wetland methane emissions, and that's very relevant to regions like the Pantanal. So there's lots of examples, and I'm sure if you go through the resources on the VIEWpoint website, some of those papers will be relevant. And I'll see if Celso's got any more examples he could think of.
Sure. There is, I was thinking of those examples that Chris just mentioned, that on the special issue. And also, we are also publishing a paper now on +1 that will appear fairly soon on projections of land use change across the whole country, the whole Brazil. We are doing projections of future land use change based on a model of a statistical model of land use. And this will be very useful for additional analysis of future projections of impact and everything. So we do cover the all biomes, and also INPE is planning to expand the whole monitoring of deforestation, land use change to all biomes as well. It's planned to do that, to have this year.
Okay, thank you, Celso. Thank you, Chris. Is anyone from the other speakers want to add anything about the biomes? And now you work in different areas within Brazil.
Yeah, just a quick comment, Maria, if I may. We're also covering the whole of Brazil in our work. So we're modeling agricultural production over every single municipality in Brazil. So that's definitely encompasses all the biomes, with certain focus on the Brazilian Northeast, but also the Cerrado, the Atlantic forest, so the south central part of Brazil as well. So
thank you very much, Marcelo. There's an interesting question here about the how do we engage as scientists with government officials to make sure that they have access to these resources or to the research. So I'm not sure if Marsh is still with us. Perhaps he can give us some pointers, or maybe Chris, or maybe the examples of some of the researchers of how they plan to engage. Otherwise, I will let Sally speak, because she is definitely our engagement person, and she has led a lot of the things that we do here, engaging with government. So Lincoln, you've got your hands raised.
Yeah, if I may, I can respond that question.
Yep, please.
Muito obrigado pela pergunta. Eu acho que é extremamente importante essa pergunta, e o trabalho que o VIEWpoint se propõe a apresentar exatamente essa ponte, né, essa ligação entre a ciência e o tomador de decisão. Todo o conteúdo que foi pensado e disponibilizado na plataforma, assim como as plataformas de fogo, de secas agrícolas, de impacto, e a própria plataforma de projeções climáticas, é uma maneira de disponibilizar todo o avanço da ciência para os tomadores de decisão. Como eu falei na frase final, é extremamente importante os tomadores de decisão, o setor público e privado, reconhecer a vulnerabilidade dos setores, e a partir de todo esse arcabouço científico que o projeto tem produzido, planejar, né, políticas e ações cada vez mais efetivas. Então, eu acho que o projeto por si só, e a plataforma VIEWpoint, é um grande resultado nessa ligação entre a ciência e o tomador de decisão. Obrigado.
Thank you, Lincoln. Does anybody from the panelists want to add to what Lincoln has said? No? Okay, so I've got a question here, quite interesting, about if we are going
sorry, Maria, I saw Chris want to say something.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Lincoln.
Sorry, I would just sort of echo what Lincoln was saying as well. I mean, we certainly at the Met Office, we have experience of engaging with UK government stakeholders. In terms of engagement, what we don't want to do is for this project to kind of leap in and start delivering services and forecasts in Brazil. The aim is to underpin the science and improve the services that are offered, but hopefully through existing routes, through the Brazil partners to their stakeholders, and hopefully, but with engagement events like this, just to raise the profile a bit, so that people in government and local decision makers get, you know, better sight of some of the science that's available. But we're not trying to shortcut any of the existing processes here.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Chris. I think this is linked to something that somebody else was asking. It's how do we account or assess for the value of what we have produced? Yeah. So, is there any pointers there that that would give an answer? Or how would you assess? We have produced so much, and we have now extended and tried to create more impact on the research. How do we assess the value?
I think that's very hard. I mean, so I've just answered this in the Q&A chat and kind of throw it back to people at CIMADEM, for example. You know, how do you assess the warnings you have at the moment and the success of those? And can, you know, there must be, you know, I'm sure we could do case studies. I know Liana kind of tracks, you know, the number of people who access the fire forecast, for example, and we get feedback and you can see press coverage. I'm not sure how you could do it in a way that's more kind of quantitative. But again, that's, you know, that's something for the whole of this community to provide ideas for, and whether it's, you know, direct impact of a warning. We've had a couple of questions in the chat as well about feeding this into the education system, which again is something that's really important. But
yes,
you know, all of these things are, you know, require a bigger effort than this kind of core collection of scientists. So it's about making this resource available. So hopefully it can be used by these other sectors. And I'm not 100% sure how we track the use or the benefit, but we're just kind of starting out really with that.
Yes, yeah, and I was going to touch on the educational system, because that was that was quite a good question as well. How can we link science? We're trying to disseminate it, but at the end of the day, it has to get to the stakeholders, and perhaps the education system is one of them as well. And it's yeah, it's good question. So we as you say, Chris, we're starting to get to grip with those answers.
Maria, perhaps I can contribute.
Please, Diana, fantastic. Yes, please.
Thank you. So one part of our contribution directly to the society was the development of this very nice book, which is É Fogo, It's Fire. And here, what we have developed is a book that aims for teachers, for community leaders, which brings not only the theoretical state-of-art knowledge on the risks and impacts of fires in the Amazon, but it also has it's a activities handbook where it offers a scientific adapted methodology on how teachers can work the subject of fires with their students. So we look at social cartography, oral history, which are two methodologies used very much by the social sciences, but we also have the use of the MapFire platform. So the students are engaged in themselves producing bulletins and alerts for their society. And there are also other activities. At the moment, we are doing a very large capacity building in many different regions of Brazil for using this book, which is also translated in Spanish, and we'll be doing capacity building in Peru and Bolivia as well. So if you want more information about this, please send me a message. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Liana. That is fantastic effort. And I guess, yes, as she's done with wildfire, I think rainfall, agriculture, all those themes that are so important within Brazil could render to create group of resources. So thank you very much. There's one last question here about the data availability. I mean, is it just that we can access the resources, or can we access also the data that has gone behind the analysis? that I'm not sure what data. We try to ask the person that was putting the question what sort of data she meant, and she was saying about temperature, quantity of rain. I don't know how much access to the data that you guys, the scientists, have used is out there, but perhaps, I mean, I don't know, Liana, if somebody would like wildfire data, is that available?
Yes, it's totally available. So you can download either the shapefile where you're gonna have, where you find the information about the fire alert level, but also the forecast for rainfall, rainfall below the average, temperature above the average, and the fire trend, all the variables that we use to generate the fire alert categories are there. If you aim to access the raw data, you can also do so. This is not in the platform, but we can provide this information.
Okay, brilliant. That's fantastic. I don't think we have any more questions. A lot of them have been already answered. We have been repeating that.
Thank you. So thank you to all our participants today for all your questions, and to our speakers for their answers. And that brings our launch to an end. I would like to say thank you to all our team who are behind the scenes, especially our operations colleagues, Joe Ansell, who you haven't seen but has been producing this whole event, and Alison Arkle, to Shannon Jones and Maria, who've been curating your questions, and to our CEO, Colin McKinnon. Also to the FCDO team in Brazil for their excellent support and encouragement, and to all the CSSP Brazil partners. We are especially grateful to all our speakers, and the biggest thanks goes to all of you for joining us today. Please do explore the VIEWpoint Brazil website and all the fantastic resources there. We would love your feedback. They've been designed with you in mind to put into your hands the information that we need to take effective climate action in terms that we can all understand. So thank you all and have a great weekend.